You're so broke you need welfare, huh? How are you doing?
At a certain party where we reunited, Howard addressed me mockingly. He doesn't know about my life after our divorce and seems to think I'm living in poverty while on welfare. But I was about to confront him with a surprising truth. Huh? Who are you confusing me with? Hearing this, Howard, unaware of my actual situation, began to scream in half madness. My name is Jenny Thompson. I am a 45-year-old housewife. My husband's name is Howard Thompson. He is a 50-year-old office worker who has now climbed the ranks to become the head of the family as a department head. Howard and I met through an arranged marriage. I had been married once when I was younger and became a widow after losing my husband early on. However, concerned about me still being young and living alone, my mother was the one who set up the arranged marriage. The prospective partner was a worker at the company where my mother worked, and given his good reputation within the company, I was persuaded to meet him, leading swiftly to our engagement. Although I was initially reluctant, I was naturally drawn to Howard's sincerity and humility, and eventually I accepted his marriage proposal.
Let's always visit your late husband's grave together on the anniversary of his death. Seeing your happy face will surely put him at ease.
I was deeply grateful to Howard for considering my feelings about my late husband. Our life together was truly happy for a while. However, it was around 6 months into our marriage when a significant turning point arrived. Dementia, you say? Having been consulted by Howard about his mother's odd behavior, I took her to a hospital in the city. Howard had work, and as a housewife, I was the only one available to accompany my mother-in-law, Susan, but the situation turned out to be worse than expected.
Moreover, it has progressed significantly. It would be dangerous for her to live alone in this condition.
Susan had been living alone and participating in weekly tennis. Recently, however, she has stopped attending, which worried her tennis friends. When they checked on her, they found her home to be very messy. She was lying down in the room, the air conditioner left running despite it being the middle of winter. Additionally, the stove was on, with a kettle heating, nearly leading to a catastrophic event. Howard had asked me to take his mother to the hospital together because something about the situation seemed off.
Dementia doesn't progress this suddenly. There must have been some symptoms before it reached this point. Weren't there any signs at all?
At that moment, a question crossed my mind. When we first had our arranged meeting, Howard had not brought his mother with him. Instead, her brother came, explaining she couldn't attend due to an important matter. Even when I visited their home to greet them, Howard was always bustling about, never letting his mother do any housework. I realized then that the reason their home had been well maintained was that Howard had been managing everything himself. I was attracted to him because he was family-oriented and took good care of his parents, but after our marriage, Howard left all the household responsibilities to me, never offering to help.
She's old, I didn't say anything, but you're still young. I'm supporting you as a housewife, so you should be able to handle the household tasks,
he told me, and I couldn't speak up about it. But if his mother had already been showing symptoms of dementia at that time, and he had been pushing himself just for that moment to hide it? Was Howard a culprit by conviction, and was this whole situation part of his plan? That suspicion crossed my mind. The doctor must have suspected we were abusing Susan, which is why he worded it that way when he was asking about the signs and symptoms. It was natural to be suspected. After all, we had left his mother to live alone without proper care. I was furious at Howard for his indifference towards his parents. I couldn't just send Susan back to her home in her current state, so I decided to bring her back to our house temporarily. Fortunately, she was not aggressive or inflexible, and she easily agreed to stay at our house when I explained the situation. I couldn't take my eyes off her, nervously waiting for Howard's return while caring for her like a child. When Howard came home and saw his mother, he frowned.
Why did Mom come back with you? Didn't you send her home after the hospital?
Shocked by his atrocious attitude, I raised my voice at him. What kind of way is that to speak about your mother? She's your mother, isn't she? Aren't you worried?
I was worried, so I asked you to take her to the hospital, right? But I never asked you to bring her back with you.
I brought her back because she can't be left alone at your parents' home. Why are you complaining about that? Did you know about this already? At that moment, Howard paused, as if disturbed by my questioning. However, he quickly regained his composure, hung up his suit, and continued speaking lazily.
What are you talking about? If you have something to say it clearly.
Your mother has dementia, and it seems to have progressed quite a bit. Did you know about this already? Did you hide it and marry me knowing this? Howard, probably anticipating my accusation from my earlier remarks, snorted through his nose as if it were all absurd, and went to grab a can of beer while loosening his tie. In the midst of such a serious conversation, it was unacceptable to let him drink, so I took the can of beer from his hand.
What are you doing?
What am I doing? We're talking about your family. How could you even drink alcohol in such a situation like this? Despite Howard's shouting, I didn't hesitate and raised my voice back at him when his worried mother came to check on us. What's wrong, Jenny? I heard loud voices. I'm sorry, Susan. There was just a big bug that startled me. Don't worry, I'll get rid of it right away. As I compared Howard to a big bug with a hint of sarcasm, he must have caught the metaphor. He glared at me suspiciously and sat down at the dining table with a sigh. I led Susan to the living room sofa, turned on the TV to distract her from our conversation, and tried to keep her from hearing what was being said. Finally, seeing Howard ready to face the conversation, I felt irritation rising, but managed to suppress it and sat down across from him to start discussing our next steps. Honestly, if Susan's dementia has progressed that far, we should consider placing her in a facility.
Then you handle all that paperwork. I don't have time because of work. You're free all day, right? It shouldn't be a problem for you to take care of my mother.
Are you planning to leave everything about your own mother to me? First, we need to explain everything to her, right? We have to explain the dementia to her and get her consent for the facility. We can't just force her into it without letting her know.
What? You haven't even talked to her about it yet? What have you been doing all day? You had plenty of time to explain after the hospital before I got home. You're bad at organizing. You could have at least figured that out.
I couldn't believe it. This man was so utterly hopeless. It was a moment of regret for my poor judgment. To think that someone could neglect their own mother to this extent was unimaginable. As I felt despair rather than anger at Howard's incredible nerve, he began to utter unbelievable words.
I'm busy with work. I'm leaving all my mother's care to you, so just handle it. But don't you dare deduct anything from my salary for my mother's expenses. I don't want any unnecessary expenses.
She's your own mother, isn't she? As I raised my voice at his incomprehensible words, his mother must have sensed something was wrong. Seeing her worried look peeking into the kitchen, I hurriedly reassured her with a smile. Howard must have seen this as a good opportunity. He left his mother's care to me and retreated to his room as if fleeing, locking himself in. Even when I tried to speak with Howard, he had locked the door, refusing to engage. I decided to wait until tomorrow to talk things over when he returned, but this turned out to be the beginning of a mistake. Unbelievably, Howard didn't return home for nearly a month. I tried calling him, but he had blocked my number, and when I asked about him at his company, they said he wasn't there, and they wouldn't tell me his whereabouts. At a loss, I was pondering what to do when a call came in from an unknown number. Hello? As I answered the phone, puzzled, it turned out to be Howard, with a lot of noisy sounds in the background.
I called because I have something to tell you.
It's not just you who has something to say here. Where are you right now? I have things to talk about too. Why haven't you come home? What are you thinking, leaving your mother and everything else behind? As I raised my voice, Howard sighed wearily and said something shocking in an annoyed tone.
I'm tired of your nagging. I probably won't come back to that house again, so pack up my stuff. I'll proceed with our divorce through a lawyer.
Huh? What did you just say? His words left me in disbelief, and my mind froze. I couldn't grasp the meaning of what was suddenly said, and I felt overwhelmed by darkness.
I'm divorcing you. I'm sick of you nagging all the time. That's it. So pack up my stuff. See ya.
With those words, Howard cut off the call abruptly. Later, as he had said, a lawyer came to the house to proceed with the divorce. I resisted desperately, but the lawyer spoke mechanically, saying if I didn't agree to the divorce, they would take it to mediation, and he wouldn't negotiate further. Standing on the brink of despair, my mother-in-law looked at me anxiously. Jenny, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well? If you're struggling, rest. I'll make some soup for you. Even with dementia, Susan's kind words almost made me cry. It was the same when we got married. Susan, who had raised Howard alone after losing her husband early, had told me she spent a long time on her own. Looking back, I think I should have relied more on those around me. Howard is kind and considerate, so he will surely support you. So, Jenny, make sure to rely on him a lot. You shouldn't bear it all alone. Remember the person who loved you, Always keep them in your heart. They're probably watching from heaven, and seeing you happy is their greatest joy. As I watched Susan sip her tea and smile cheerfully, tears flowed freely. She must have sensed my distress and reluctance to get married. She had understood everything and accepted me with generosity, leaving me only with words of gratitude. Looking back, I think Susan was thinking of Howard as a child at that time. Now that his kindness has become superficial, that memory has faded, and only the cherished memory of her dear child pursuing his interests remains. I heard that with dementia, only past memories remain vivid, and those words seemed to confirm it. As I cared for Susan, wondering what to do next, I felt worn down by the care and as if I was reaching my limit. If I had to endure such harassment every day, perhaps it would be easier to just divorce. Fortunately, I had a secret plan to help Susan. If Howard, who was being unreliable, was going to be responsible for my beloved mother-in-law, I would be the one to take care of her. I would protect her. With that vow in my heart, I decided to divorce Howard as he wished. 5 years later, I was at a certain reception party. Dressed in a gown, I was exchanging greetings with celebrities from various fields. It was then that I caught the eye of someone approaching, who grinned upon recognizing me.
You're so broke you need welfare, huh? How are you doing?
It was Howard, accompanied by an exceptionally beautiful woman. She was his current wife, her name being Katie, and he had demanded a divorce for me to marry her. What are you doing? I spoke as if I didn't know Howard was here, but actually I knew that he was going to be here already. I knew he had brought his wife here, that he had divorced me to marry his current wife, and that he had married me so that I would take care of his mother, who's a burden to him.
I came here because I got invited. What about you? Living on welfare and still struggling, so why are you here? Dressing up in fancy clothes? Trying to look rich.
He mocked my appearance with a laugh, implying that even a donkey would look fine dressed up. I was about to deliver a line that would astonish him. Huh? Who are you confusing me with? As I scoffed at Howard's remark, the surrounding people who heard him also chuckled. Confused, Howard and his wife looked at me and around them in a flustered state until the tycoon's son, who was Howard's wife's brother, Jack, approached me and greeted me.
Thank you very much for inviting us, ma'am. Ma'am?
Howard was shocked to hear this, and his wife also widened her eyes in surprise.
What? Did you really not know that this person is the CEO of Ross Company?
Jack looked at him coldly, glaring at him. Despite attending the reception party, he couldn't believe Howard had come without knowing who the CEO was. His look seemed to pierce Howard.
I hope my brother-in-law hasn't done anything disrespectful to you, ma'am.
With a meaningful tone, Howard's expression twisted. Surely the past issues of harassment, the divorce, and the matter of his mother were rushing through his mind. I watched this, smiling amiably, and responded that there was nothing to worry about. He's your brother-in-law? I didn't know that. We've had interactions before, so it's all fine. Howard and his wife were bewildered by my reply. Surely he, being her brother, thought I was just an ex-wife and the affair partner during our marriage. They thought this fact hadn't been revealed. Howard's wife started sweating profusely, but Howard and his wife's misconception was just that, a misunderstanding. As the reception was about to start, I was introduced as the host and stepped onto the stage to discuss the secret behind my business success and why I started this company. Among various questions, Jack raised his hand, and I called on him.
I heard that there was a particular catalyst that made you manage your current company. What was that catalyst?
As the audience also seemed curious, all eyes turned to me. I told them I had something to show and began playing a shocking video on the screen.
What is this?
The video showed Howard and his wife, and the unaware audience exchanged puzzled looks, wondering what was going on. These two are the reason I've climbed to where I am today. As I said this with a fresh smile, Howard seemed to realize what was happening. In a panic, he reached out and shouted,
"Stop it!"
while trying to rush onto the stage. However, I had anticipated this and had the male staff from my company restrain him. Thanks to them, the video continued to play, and murmurs spread through the party venue.
But it worked out well, right? I managed to divorce that woman and even dumped the demented old hag. Now, I'm finally free.
I was panicked at first. Taking care of a mother-in-law with dementia? No thanks. I'd rather die. Then you came up with that bold plan. I was really scared for you.
But it was a great idea, right? I married Jenny, dumped the old hag on her, and then got a divorce. As long as we pretended not to know about my mother's dementia, there was no problem. I was honestly scared when I heard she almost started a fire, but it's no longer my problem. Whether we're related by blood or not, I don't need a burden like her.
The audience was speechless at the video of Howard and his wife, laughing heartily at such inhumane remarks. Realizing the surrounding gazes, his wife panicked and Howard slumped down in despair. But I wasn't finished yet. I climbed to where I am today thanks to my ex-husband Howard Thompson and his current wife Katie. They deceived me, dumping my mother-in-law who has dementia to me and just abandoned us. He thought I was penniless and living on welfare because he had no interest in me. But before we married, I had already saved up $900 million. If he had been interested in his wife, he would have looked into that or asked, right? What do y'all think? Howard and his wife were shocked by my words, and Howard exclaimed,
900 million?
I used to manage several companies and made tens of millions annually. Having earned enough for a lifetime, I retired early, and thanks to him, I didn't have to touch that money and lived a comfortable married life. When he met me, I was just a housewife, helping out with my family's business, so he suspected nothing. As I narrated this with a troubled laugh, the audience mocked them for their ignorance, and Howard and his wife were ridiculed. The only one silently watching all this was Jack, and Katie began begging him to do something, throwing a tantrum. But the next surprise came in an instant. This worthless ex-husband pushed everything onto me and dropped me to the lowest depths of life. But someone was there to help me. Light technician, please spotlight him. With that, the spotlight that had been on me shifted unexpectedly to Jack. Seeing this, Katie was startled and frantically looked back and forth between me and her brother. This video is well shot, isn't it? It's actually a recording of their conversation. Who do you think filmed it? Then, at that moment, Katie's expression, who had thought her brother was her ally, shifted to one of utter despair. I'm sure the astute among you have realized by now. No one else around them could have filmed this. This means that this footage was taken by her brother, who has been collaborating with me. It's quite a valuable video. Upon hearing this, the color drained from Howard's face. It was clear now not only that his marriage was based on infidelity, but also that he hadn't expected me and his wife's brother to be in cahoots. As I started to explain why I had formed a cooperative relationship with him, Howard and his wife were rendered speechless. I placed my mother-in-law in a facility and started a new business to support her. During this time, I received a phone call. It was from him. He had found out about my ex-husband and his current wife's affair when they got married. This was because my ex-husband had boasted to a female colleague when he joined his company, and the story reached the president, her brother. Howard's indiscretion had led to this predicament. After learning the truth, he reached out to me out of concern. He offered to personally support my business and even became an investor. Now he's a good business partner. Why has he supported me so much? Because he too had been cheated on by his former wife and divorced as a result. As I shared this, the wife's brother clenched his fists as if to lay even his own grievances at Howard and his wife's feet. It's unforgivable to have such dishonorable people like them in my family. I'll do anything I can, so let me help you get your revenge. That was the essence of his call to me, and that's why we're here today. After laying out all the circumstances, I gave Howard and his wife a cold look, and the audience's chilly stares pierced the couple. In the entirely hostile atmosphere of the venue, Howard and his wife were clearly rattled. As I slowly approached the pair in front of the public, I delivered the final blow. I have no interest in ever associating with people like you again. I will protect my mother-in-law for the rest of my life. Please, never interfere with our family again. Staff, please escort these people out. Upon hearing this, Howard desperately reached out to me, trying to ingratiate himself as the staff moved to forcibly remove him. He resisted, but to no avail, and was dragged away struggling. Meanwhile, his wife, accompanied by female staff, quietly exited the venue. She did not resist, likely overwhelmed by the shocking revelations and the fear of her family finding out. In this way, I succeeded in settling a long-standing grudge, and my mother-in-law now lives comfortably in a facility. I make sure to visit her after work, and even though her dementia has progressed, she still remembers me, even if she forgets her own son. I want to continue watching you find happiness. Surrounded by those who likely believe my love was wrought miracles, I cherish the joy of remaining in her last memories. Besides me, Susan smiles peacefully, and I too look up at the sky, wishing for her long life. This has become our daily exchange. Since then, Howard and his wife have been disowned by their family, and Howard, having disgraced his company, was dismissed, albeit forcefully. It's natural for a company to fear losing credibility if it becomes known that someone they brought in as a son-in-law was such a person. I felt no sympathy for him, considering it was only right that he should take responsibility. Now, having lost their place, the two have fled to the countryside, struggling to survive day by day in a land where no one knows them. Though I still feel anger that hasn't been fully satisfied, seeing Susan smiling like this is enough for now. I will continue to look forward, protecting the important times with my work, love life, and family. That's how I live each day, cherishing every moment.